Hello, this is Dr. George Kaliadan, psychologist. I've been practicing in Dubai for the past 25 years. Now, this is the exam season, and students as well as parents are now concerned about the exam, how good you are performing in the exam. And this usually is associated with some heightened stress. So, I thought it will be helpful if you discuss a little bit about exam related stress and generally about stress and how to manage your stress and how to improve your efficiency during this exam period. I'm happy to share this with you as I have been doing these workshops for teenagers for the past many years, focusing on these areas of skills development and academic skills and managing exam and exam anxiety and how to improve your efficiency in the exam is one of the topics we discuss. So in that light, it will be helpful for you at this point. As you know, all students don't respond to the exam situation in the same way. There are different types of responses you see, and some are more anxious, some are less anxious, and there's a wide variety of kind of responses you find in students. This is the first thing you need to understand so that the management can also be tailored to individual needs and specific natures of each student. As you can see, there are different types. I will try to list some of the types of people. So there are, as you know, there are some disorganized people who have difficulty to getting organized. They are generally the last minute people. They just postpone things to the last minute. They have difficulty to get their things organized and keeping in neat and tidy. So this is one type of people. There are what we call the nervous type of people. There are people who are kind of a rushing through type, who go through the exam, in a rush. They are always in a rush. And also we see around us people who are overly perfectionistic. They want everything neat, tidy, and perfect. Even the exam, it affects them because they want everything tidy and perfect. And there are also people who are kind of mind blocked. That means when they enter the exam and then they get the question paper, it's as if they cannot do anything. They are they're completely in a kind of a block mind. You don't get any answer. You are stuck, kind of a thing. You'll see kind of people who are also kind of laid off about the exam. They don't bother. It's okay, exam or no exam, it's all right. And even during the exam, they are not bothered, they are not disturbed. Maybe they will finish it off within a short time and they just walk out of the class, don't bothered about it. So in order to plan for your exams, first of all, you need to know what type of person you are talking about, and accordingly you need to also change your strategy in terms of how to prepare yourself or how to prepare the person close to you, your child or your friend or whoever. Generally, the exam season is high stress period for everybody, naturally, because there is pressure about exam. Some students have better skills in managing stress. Some children are even highly positive and enthusiastic about exam because they have already studied and it's an opportunity for them to prove their abilities and knowledge. But for a vast majority of students, studying for exam is a highly stressful experience. So some students may go through intense mental stress. They may experience one or more of these symptoms like extreme anxiety or even panic state, which is very extreme kind of an anxiety. They may feel frustration. Some are probably depressed, and they feel sometimes helpless because they cannot live up to their, you know, their own standards or expectations. They are frustrated. They are helpless. And sometimes there is an urge to avoid or escape. Oh my God, I don't want to write this exam. Or if there any way I can avoid it. There are people who are restless and maybe angry, especially with regard to the family members sometimes, you know. And some go through, you know, especially the last minute people, they also go through some the guilt about neglecting their studies. I wasted all my time, now this is the last minute, now hardly any time left. So there can be feelings of guilt. And naturally, there are in many people the fear of failure, or even sometimes people feel I will be expelled, or you know, I will fail in the grade, like, you know. So these are the kind of anxieties which are common when the exam comes closer. Just as the students, I also see that, you know, it is common that even the family members, you know, the father or mother, you know, or both, may go through some stress and anxiety, as they are the ones who are managing the study behavior, and sometimes it upsets them. They may be having high anxiety about the child's performance. Will he do well, or is he going to, kind of, fail, or lose it? There probably is anger about the child's negligent or irresponsible behavior. Maybe even the exam is coming closer, but then this guy is not really spending enough time in studies, or he's just taking it easy. So it worries them, or irritates them, or angers them. They feel agitated sometimes, and they feel helpless if they are not able to change the situation. And sometimes, even they go through depressive conditions. So when you look at yourself, if you are one who is going to prepare for the exam, or is one of the parents, at this stage you can look at yourself and evaluate or assess the level of anxiety in you at this point on a 10-point scale from 1 to 10. Where do you stand in terms of your level of anxiety? Are you really very highly anxious now, or just medium or low anxiety? This is important because this has a bearing upon the efficiency and how this period is going to be. So I will explain to you how this affects your performance. In the scientific research, the psychological research shows that the anxiety and performance is related in a curvilinear way. I will explain to you. That means at a very lower level of anxiety, the minimum anxiety, or hardly any anxiety, the performance may be rather low, because there is hardly any arousal or motivation or interest, or any urgency for the person to perform. So therefore, it may be the performance may be at a lower levels with a lower anxiety. But when the anxiety level is moderate, minimum to moderate, then the performance is at the peak, because that helps to be reasonably well aroused and motivated, and to function and to perform well in whatever task it is, including your study material. But the interesting thing is that when the anxiety is pushed to the higher levels, and there is higher level of anxiety, the performance drops significantly. That means if you are in an extreme anxiety state, like in a panic state or something, the performance level is likely to be very low. So this is very important to realize, that this connection between anxiety and performance. Sometimes, without knowing this, our strategy may produce the wrong results, not what you expect. Especially when you are dealing with, if you recognize that you are a student of attention deficit or hyperactivity student, or you are having oppositional defiant behavior pattern. In such cases, there is a long history of parents raising their voice or criticizing or punishing the child because of inaction, or they are not they are not responsible, or they are not doing things in time. So naturally, the parents have a the history of criticizing or pushing, or kind of sometimes punishing them. But actually, what happens if you keep on, increasing the pressure, and if the person happen to be more anxious, then, as we discussed before, the anxiety level goes beyond a certain, optimal level, then the performance will come down. The student may not be able to concentrate. He may not be able to memorize things or remember things, or the overall performance level falls down. So that is very important to know. So this knowledge should help us to manage our communication in such a way that we don't end up increasing the anxiety level of the student. This is very important to know during this exam period. But at the same time, you have to motivate the person in such a way that a minimum optimal level of anxiety is maintained, so that regular systematic work can be performed during this period. So what you can do is, you have to be patient enough, while you're remembering, or if you are a parent, you have to remind the student of the commitments and responsibilities. But you have to explain the issue in a calm tone, so that it does not, by default, end up increasing the anxiety. So unless you are conscious about it, it is likely that your communication gets out of bound, and it may end up increasing the anxiety level beyond the level that is desirable. So this may be a little challenging, especially if you are in the habit of raising your voice, or getting over anxious, and pressurizing, and and being punitive and overcritical, etc. So it may be challenging, but you have to train yourself, if you are a parent, to stay calm in the moments of frustration. The same applies to you. If you are self-critical, you have to be rather kind to yourself, but at the same time be reasonable and be motivated enough, or responsible enough, but at the same time not overly guilty or self-critical. So you have to be composed enough to handle the situation with an appropriate positive response, so that your productivity is not adversely affected. So this is very important for you to know this. Your goal should be to manage the exam related communication in such a way that anxiety level is maintained at the lower optimal level. This is where we need to apply some psychological skills and techniques. So both parents and the students themselves, you have to apply this technique, so that you monitor your anxiety level, and you try to maintain it at a level that is helpful for your performance. Sometimes, in their eagerness to motivate the students, parents and teachers may end up increasing the anxiety. So this is what I explained: threat, fear of failure, shaming, severe criticism, etc. may increase anxiety, although these are intended to elicit more work and sustained effort. So your intention may be good. You may be giving a long lecture with a good intention, but what you have to look at is what response this communication is creating in the listener, or the student, or whoever it is. But often such communications trigger anxiety. So you have to monitor yourself, what response you are actually creating. You are trying to motivate, but you end up creating more hopelessness, which drains the mind of the available energy, which is important during the exam because you are working on high stress with a lot of work to do. So you need to maintain a high level of energy. So one way the parents can do it, or whoever is helping the student can do it, instead of creating a very negative outcome, which is what often the teachers and parents do. If you don't do this, you will fail, and you will do this, and your failure, you will be a total failure in your life, and will be wandering in the straight, jobless, and all these kind of negative images they bring into the child, in an effort to motivate them or to raise the anxiety so that they will function. But since you don't realize the effect of extreme anxiety, but too much of this negative visualization creates, the opposite kind of results. So it is better to help the student visualize a positive outcome. In the sense, okay, this is what you are going to create. This is what I can see. You are going to get a good result, and you are going to be successful, and you are going to be complimented by your friends and your teachers and all. That vision, if they can create within themselves and sustain it. And if from the parent side, if you are trying to sustain that vision, but at the same time reminding them, keeping them mindful of what they need to do in order to reach that, the vision they have, what they need to do, and that becomes a kind of a positive way of approaching the work, and the work becomes more meaningful because it is going to lead to a kind of a positive outcome that he is creating for himself. So that way is more helpful than making them scared or be fearful of the future and the negative vision that it produces. So in order to do that, the parents have also, or the person who is studying has to be aware of the power of positive reinforcement. It can be very effectively used in sustaining motivation. So how do we do that? So instead of condemning a behavioral deficit meaning that you are not doing enough, so study behavior is in deficit means, instead of studying for 2 hours, which is normal or expected, he studies only for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So it is in deficit. It will not be adequate for the preparation. So with that deficit, in behavior, can you still make room for, positive reinforcement? Yes, the answer is yes. Instead of constantly criticizing him and threatening him about this, you can say, okay, this half an hour, yeah, it is good enough. It is good that you are studying for half an hour. It is good, helpful. And you have started learning. That's good. So let us try to increase it, tomorrow by little more, maybe 45 minutes or 1 hour. So that will help you. So that extra effort that the person is putting in becomes a positive experience rather than a burden, which is very important. So your reinforcement acts as a motivator in the sense, the more you reinforce for a certain behavior, the more chances of you increasing the frequency and intensity of that response or behavior. So this is actually how you shape behavior from the lower levels to the higher levels. So as very inadequate or imperfect behavior is reinforced so that he can move to the next level of perfection, and to the next level, and to the next level, and to the next level. So each time you reinforcing the person so that in the end he can reach the target behavior. So in this manner, when you keep rewarding incrementally every improvement until the target behavior is produced, that becomes a very positive and motivating experience. So for this, you can also use between parents and teenagers something what we call the contingency contract. You make an agreement. What is it that you agree? Okay, today I agree to study for 1 hour, and then you monitor and say if he reaches that 1 hour point, reinforcing or the kind of level of concentration or whatever you consider as a target behavior. So each time, you review the contract, and if you can even modify it if that contract, this one is not reached. So this is one way you can change the pattern of communication during the exam period, which is very important, because very often a lot of damage is done because you don't manage this communication, exam related communication properly. So that instead of creating a motivation, you create more problem. As I mentioned before, uh, different people respond to exam differently, so we need to have a different kind of strategies for each kind of persons. For example, for the disorganized person who forgets things, who tends to be late and takes wrong steps, etc., who is impulsive, these kind of people, when they are preparing for the exam, it can be a challenge because naturally they don't have the ability to do things in time. They don't have the ability to sustain their attention for long. They get easily distracted, and it's a struggle for them to maintain their attention during this exam, and it's a challenge. So first of all, you need to recognize that challenge within yourself. You should know that this is your limitation, and therefore you have to work around it. And for the parents, you should recognize that this as a limitation, not as a moral, weakness, or the one he does not want to do it, and this is because he is not willing, or he is disordered or anything like that. So recognizing it as a limitation, it will help the parents to support him better, to work around it. So the such a person preparing for the exam, you have to plan it carefully the night before, because such people are likely to be forgetful. They may miss some certain important things they need to take for the exam. You need to check and make sure that he has to taken everything and keep it ready beforehand, not the last minute before you leave. Keep everything ready, and you plan to arrive half hour early because it's a natural tendency to be late. So such people have to plan to reach early. You have to check, and also when you get the question papers, you have to read it carefully so you don't understand it, wrongly, or answer give the wrong numbers. These are the kind of mistakes you are likely to make in such people. So also at the end of the you have to also make sure you check the answer. You have to leave time enough to check the answers before submitting. So because you are likely to make some silly mistakes, which you kind of because of lack of attention or something. So that is important. And people who are the rushing through type, who are in a hurry, and they tend to rush through the exam as they get restless, and they hand over the paper early. They quickly write through it, and sometimes they feel that they know everything, and in that process they may miss some questions or answers, and they may wrongly answer questions which you already knew but he answered wrong. These kind of things are possible, so you have to be also careful. Such people have to prepare themselves by familiarizing with the exam format of the paper. Plan to use all the time, so that is, they have to prepare their mind that it is a 3-hour exam or 2-hour exam, whatever, and they have to prepare to stay calmly for this period, so that whatever spare time they get can be done for improving or taking time for each question, enough time, or at the end even for checking the answers and all that. So that is how that those kind of people should respond to the exam situation. Now we have the kind of perfectionists, who want everything perfect, and they cannot handle if things are not perfect. Even they are very demanding upon themselves. They spend too much time on each question. That is one likely the mistake that they make. They know the answer, they want to do it perfectly, but then they spend too much time on some questions which they know. In that process they may not get enough time to attempt the last question. So they also have to practice doing the question reasonably well, not too perfectly, because that being too perfect can here be counterproductive, because it may not help them, because they may miss some questions and stuff. So use a watch or a clock to set time limits for each questions, and tell yourself, okay, I'm done reasonably well, that's enough. You have to set a limit to your perfection. That is very important. And then we have this laid back dreamer type of people, and they are also they actually hate the hassle of the exam and its stress. They take too much time to choose a question and more time to think over in between, and they are very kind of with a foggy mind, and in between they may get lost in a dream, and they seem to be disinterested, and sometimes they tend to leave the exam hall, leaving things incomplete and all that. So such people also need to prepare themselves, because first of all they have to motivate themselves and think about the importance of exam in their life. If they mess it up, so what consequences they will have to face, and suppose they have to repeat the year or the semester and all that, so these kind of consequences they have to visualize, so that they have to prevent such things from happening, which should motivate enough to urge them, and make them responsible and conscious enough to do things in a more systematic manner, taking their time. And also then you have the kind of a mind blocked person. That is, a person who is kind of their mind goes kind of blank when they get to the exam paper. Although they have prepared well, they think, but at that moment they are in such a state of mind, they cannot remember anything. You have heard people telling like that, I've prepared everything, but I went completely blank. So they feel like leaving the exam hall right away, because they don't get any answer. It's a kind of a disaster for them. So for them, they have to be a little patient in handling that situation. First of all, you sit there calmly and try to brainstorm yourself, about the topic which they know very well. So ask themselves, what do I know in this particular course or subject? So they will know, okay, I know about this. Okay, now use it as a nucleus to which the other information can be added. Okay, now this is what I know. Okay, what more do I know? What do I know about that, about this, etc. Now, like that, you begin to kind of expand the knowledge base, which gives you enough confidence, and it may bring down the anxiety level, so that after some time you are able to recall some of the things which you have studied before. At least you are able to manage that situation effectively. So if needed, you ask your invigilator or whoever is the department representative in the hall. You can tell them, say, I'm in a big stress, can you just help me? Or so that they can little bit of calm down or reassure you, or which will probably help you to come out of that kind of a mind blocked situation. So this is also important for us to know there are these different ways of managing exam related situations, depending on the type of person you are. So in conclusion, so we have to know that, see, there are things that you can do to improve your overall exam experience and to make it better, more productive and efficient. So for that, you have to try to create an environment within your home. So everybody who is around, the family, the parents, everybody has to, cooperate, in order to reduce the anxiety level, or rather to maintain the optimal level of the anxiety, so that it is you are motivating enough to to build up certain level of minimum or moderate level of anxiety, but at the same time you are take care that it doesn't go beyond the accepted levels, or which will be helpful. And also you have to recognize that this long period of preparation, you cannot be completely shut out from all the other activities, or other stimulations or interests. Otherwise it will be there will be too much of a boredom that sets in. So you have to address this boredom part also. So that means you have to incorporate, you can include some kind of a stimulating activities, even the exam preparation time, not to make it completely boring. So some parents actually shut down everything, the TV is off, the phone is off, everything completely, so that the student becomes responsible. This doesn't seem to be a good idea. So even if you reduce the TV time and phone, smartphone devices time, still you should allow or plan for some kind of a stimulating activities of going out or spending some time in interesting or stimulating activities and all that, which will make the exam period more bearable. So these are a few things that I wanted to share with you, those who are preparing for the exam, and I believe this will be helpful for you. And here I am in Dubai. As you know, I have been conducting this training program for teenagers, the Teenager Dynamic program. And this is, now I'm offering it as a 2-day, full day program, 12 hours program, which helps teenagers to develop some of the important skills in their life, like the academic or study skills, the motivation, their communication skills, or emotions management, how to manage their freedom, and how to take the right kind of decisions, and how to make a good presentation in your school or in your public speaking, and how to improve your overall emotional intelligence. So all these are the kind of things that we discuss in this 2-day intensive program, and generally students enjoy the time we have these 2 days, because we it is very interactive with activities and and fun, and generally it is good. So I would encourage you to consider attending this workshop of teenagers, which is called Teenager Dynamic, and which will also help you handle your stress and anxiety and anger and other emotions better. And is actually an investment for your self development in the future, so that you can handle your life situations better. So with this, I'm happy to share these thoughts with you, and I hope it has been useful for you. And here, wishing you all the best during this exam period, and may you do well and produce excellent results.